high rollers. In the very same building, bowling is king. High stakes as 5 bowlers have a shot at the winner's prize of $100,000. ABC Sports presents live in its 27th season, the Professional Bowlers Tour. We're in Atlantic City, New Jersey for the finals of the Seagram's Coolers United States Open. Here is our field of 5. Fifth seeded, he won the 1982 United States Open title from Milwaukee, Oregon, David Husted. His opponent in the first game is the runner-up in last year's Open, the defending Firestone champion, Pete Weber. In the second match is the biggest man in our field from Garden Grove, California, Mark Baker. In the semifinal game, last year's PBA Rookie of the Year from Elmira, New York, Ryan Shafer. And our tournament leader has won 2 United States Open crowns. PBA Player of the Year, Marshall Holman. That's our field today on the Professional Bowlers Tour. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is a timeless wonder. The Hardwood Boardwalk in dear old beloved Atlantic City. Perhaps you are a part of this crowd that was taped some time ago, but it hasn't changed a lot. It's still a nostalgic walk. The skyline has changed, though. Hotels like the Showboat, which is the scene today. Finals of the $500,000 Seagram's Coolers United States Open. Huge crowd, capacity crowd looking on. Adjacent in a huge lunch for the pros that has taken place earlier. We'll tell you more about it later. I'm Chris Schenkel, delighted you joined us. The Bowling Proprietors Association of American Seagram's Coolers. Hope you'll enjoy the show, and I know you will, because we have 5 wonderful young men, 5 great bowlers. They are bowling for a total of $220,000 live this afternoon. The winner will receive $100,000. Immediately following this telecast, it's ABC's Wide World of Sports. Today, the grueling Baja 1000, the Grand National Steeplechase, and a look at a championship fight, Holyfield against De Leon. In 1978, my colleague Nelson Burton Jr. won the United States Open, and I'm anxious to find out how much you won that day.
Well, Chris, 10 years ago, I won 1-0 less than that 100,000 they have today. It was 10,000, and back then I think there was even a little more prestige to the title. I think the guys have to look at the money today, but the U.S. Open has come a long way since the initial U.S. Open, what they called the All-Star, 1941. Johnny Crimmins won that first tournament, and the man that won the All-Star tournament had the right to be called the world's champion for 1 year. Now, in 1971, the All-Star became the U.S. Open and joined the PBA Tour as one of its Triple Crown events. Mike Lemongeau won that first event. Now, Johnny Crimmins didn't bowl any 300 games in 1941, and the scores weren't very big. But this week, Mark Baker shot some scores that I believe you'll see some of today. Look at this 8-game set, the highest in U.S. Open history. 280, 279, 279, 247, 269, 279, 256, and 204, a fantastic 260-plus average. Unbelievable. We're going to see some of that today. Along with that, you have the pressure of bowling just 1 game for $100,000. Chris, there's a lot of money at stake in the other positions. Let's take a look at that prize fund before we get ready for action.
And there's the breakdown. In other words, the loser of our very first match coming up will have finished 5th, $15,000. Stepladder approach, as is our format, head-to-head. David Husted on the right in the red shirt will bowl first. He's from Milwaukee, Oregon, going against a great talent, 25-year-old Pete Weber. Pete has been in 5 major championships in a row. Here's Husted. And the 1982 United States Open winner in Houston, Texas. Husted has opened with a strike. Now at the slim, trim Pete Weber, 5'7", 130 pounds. His first shot. He was second last year in the United States Open. A high hit gets a bad break in the very first frame, Bo.
Chris, Pete told me before we started the championship round he has to stay slow, and as he quickly goes for another ball. He needs to get the ball to the right of the 6 pin, slide it in the 7 to convert this spare. He's had to stay slow, but that can cause him to go high like that.
Wonderful try to convert that split, but to no avail. So it is an open frame as we replay this profile look.
5 times he's made the championship rounds in the last 5 majors. As you see the high backswing, his left arm pulling his left shoulder back, driving the right shoulder through, the good wrist action. Just a little soft with that shot. Let's see if he can recover in the 2nd frame.
By the 25-year-old who won the 1987 Firestone Tournament of Champions, son of Dick Weber, the legendary bowling professional, who is the host here and is watching the action. Now Husted looking for a double. Split broken up, leaving only the 10 pin.
Everybody was talking about the scores all week long. We're going to see some big scores today. And I think what they have to do with the tremendous pressure of the U.S. Open Championship and the big money is just loosen up a little bit, get those pins to fly around. We're going to see some great pin action.
Dave Husted this year was 3rd in the Milwaukee Open. 2nd television appearance of the year, his 26th television appearance overall.
David with that just wonderful style. Good all-around athlete, opens that backswing up, doesn't cup his wrist like many of the crankers. A good push away on that pivot step, the long follow through. And when you see David Husted come all the way up with his hand like he did on that follow through, you know he's bowling well. And the
27-year-old now has 2 strikes in 3 frames, has the lead by 11 as Weber is back up. He has a strike working. Now shooting in the 3rd frame. Can cut the lead with this shot.
Pete taking 1 of 3 re-racks he's allowed in each game of a championship match. Taking a little more time. He said he's going to be a little bit slower today. He says he felt he's rushed himself too much in his last championship round appearance, and he's going to take some time, work on his concentration.
With his double, he now trails by only 1. We asked him earlier what it would mean winning the Open.
Well, the U.S. Open means to me is that it is one of the majors. It's one of our Triple Crowns, and I haven't won it yet, and I want to, but the $100,000 is a lot.
Well, his dad, when it was called the All-Star, won it 4 times. And in the era of the 50s, Don Carter won it equal number of times. So the great bowlers have won it.
Pete taking a little time. You know, he has an interesting spotting theory, Chris. He starts off spotting between the arrows, and as he takes each succeeding step towards the foul line, he lets his eyes drift in towards the foul line. In other words, he travels about 15 feet to the foul line. He brings his target in about 15 feet, and the point of release, it's right over the foul line he's spotting.
Pete has left the 4-pin in the 4th frame. You can sense the tension, and this is our very first match. Pete sticking a little bit at the line, looking down, a spare in the 4th frame. 2 pins separating these 2 great winners. On the championship pair you're looking at now.
All week long, Chris. Synthetic lanes, plastic type lanes. There's no wood in these lanes. The only time all year on ABC TV we use this type of lane. The oil pattern was fairly simple. The PBA oiled the lanes approximately 35 feet down the lane in a very light pattern left to right. So there's not much of a buildup in the center. So the players pretty much get the ball reaction whichever way they throw it. And one of the keys is once a player gets zeroed on these plastic or synthetic lanes is that the lane doesn't change much like a wood lane. So once a player gets loose here, we'll get big scores, and I think that's the reason we saw him all week long. Now, David Husted leads by 2, strike up, 4th frame.
A very high hit, breaking sharply at the end, leaving the 3-6-10. Pressure. There's a lot of it here in this very first game.
Husted's ball drifts high, leaving the 3-6-10. And one thing to watch for is a high hit is usually caused by a player's inability to slide on these synthetic approaches. Husted ended up about 1 foot behind the foul line, didn't get the follow-through necessary, and went high.
Striker, 27-year-old, gave us his answer to our question of what it would mean winning the United States Open.
Well, this is the second time we've bowled for $100,000 on top. The prestige of the U.S. Open is one thing, but I'd be a fool to say that if I wasn't thinking about the $100,000. I've made the top 5. I have a chance to win the tournament, and that's what I'm keying on right now. I got to win 4 games. I've done it before. Hopefully I can do it again today.
5th frame. Back in the pocket now on the left lane, the United States Open winner in 1982. Second last year, Pete Weber. And there is Pete's father. 29 PBA titles. Sort of everybody's hero.
Yes, he is the bowling host professional here at the Showboat Lanes, Atlantic City. Now his son up there, who is already one of the great players of all time, destined to be even greater. Trails by 2 pins, 5th frame.
Crossing over, leaving the 310 this time, second split that he's had to face here in the first match. Now the wrinkles in his brow, there it's all right, but after the shot, it becomes furrowed.
Chris, watch Pete's eyes as they drift up closer to the foul line. You see him look right down at the foul line as he releases the ball. He knows he threw it a little bit too slowly, needs to fit the ball between the 3 and 10 pins.
Ooh, what a worthwhile conversion that was. Coming in the 5th frame, converting the 310. How important, Bo.
So much to make those splits. It's like the ability to chip and putt well in your short game in golf. The same is true in bowling, as these players throw lots and lots of strikes, but you have to fill in the frames between to stay competitive in the matches. And I think what we're seeing here is what you picked up, Chris. It's just nobody's loose. The pressure of the U.S. Open, it shows on their eyes. Very tentative arm swings, not that snappy wrist action as they release the ball. And they're throwing the ball awfully slowly today. Need to pick up that speed.
And Bo, you know, that carries over into the crowd and to a father like Dick Weber, and even to commentators. The bigger the event, you sense the pressure. You get the feeling that you want all 5 to be in the top spot at the very end.
That's for sure. Now David Husted, going for his first double, has a strike up.
Another high hit, leaving the 3-6-9-10 on the right lane.
And what's happening with both these players is, especially David Husted, is not getting a full slide as he releases the ball on the right-hand lane. And without that, he doesn't get the extension as he comes through the shot, and the ball hooks about 3 feet too quickly. Can't control it, has been going high. Tough spare.
Beautiful shot by David Husted, who in the last game, the position game, defeated a close friend of his, Rick Manier, by 35 pins to move from 6th to 5th. That's always difficult, isn't it, going against head-to-head and a friend is involved.
I agree, Chris, and 56 games is a whole week's of action. But with all that money at stake, I'm sure that David was thinking of his treasury and not Manier's. Now, let's see if he can continue striking.
Mixing strike coming in the 7th frame of our very first game. More after this.
As you look at our tournament leader, contemplating what he has to do about 50 minutes from now to hold on to that $100,000 first prize. Now Pete Weber, up 7th frame, trails by 4 pins, can take the lead.
Heel of his right shoe off the approach, most of it, just enough to have a foundation. Okay, that may loosen Pete up a bit here in this very first game, and the winner will meet big Mark Baker of Garden Grove, California, followed by Rookie of the Year Ryan Shafer, and then Holman.
See Weber get a really nice slide within 3 inches of the foul line. He releases that ball in his slide. He didn't come to a stop and then release the ball. Had a little extra speed on that ball. kept it light, sought out the 5, and now he leads by 6 pins. Can extend to 16 with an additional strike here in the 8th.
Weighs 130 pounds on a 5-foot 7-inch frame. Of the last 5 majors is now sort of getting into the groove, and he has a 3-bagger through 8 frames, 16-pin lead. But remember, Husted now with a strike up in the 7th, shooting in the 8th. Oh, this is a hard-fought battle. He'll take it. We all would, wouldn't we?
Chris, watch the action of the 2-pin. It goes to sideboard, takes out the 4, then watch the action of the 3-pin as it comes in and gets between the 6 and 10 pins. This is the shot that David Husted carried against Rick Minear in the 56th game last night to open the door and help him lock up that number 5 position. A great break at a critical time. Back and forth, Husted can now retake the lead on the lane he has not missed.
Waves to it like get lost, and I don't blame him because it's an awful looking 3, 4, 7, 9, 10. Oh.
All sorts of pins down there. 2 schools of thought. Throw the ball over here in the 6-10 zone, bounce them over towards the 4-7. I think that's the best way to do it. Let's see what happens. Not to be.
So Pete Weber opened with an open frame, converted to 310 in the 5th, and now in the foundation 9th. 171 through the 9th for Husted with 3 in a row, 9th frame, Pete Weber. There you see the heels. Four-bagger, and now the result of consistency in an open frame, leading by 35.
That was the key shot for Pete Weber. He put the lockjaws on David Husted with that last shot. David getting that open in the 9th frame. He had a possible 240 game until that open frame came along. Now the best he can shoot is 201. Pete Weber going at a 226 pace. Will lock it up with just a good count here and go against Mark Baker.
And groove very much now. He has strung 5. He now leading by 45. We'll have the final score for you when we come back, but Weber now will meet big Mark Baker. $15,000. Mark Baker is Weber's opponent. Let's get better acquainted with Mark Baker. Up close and personal.
We have a different lifestyle. The sun's always out. I mean, there's so much to do. The kind of cars we drive. I personally have a 911 Porsche. It might be, extravagant, costs a lot of money, but it sure is fun to drive. Last year, I hurt my back and my ankle at the same time. My back went out from the pressures of bowling, all the games. My ankle was a whole high school injury from basketball. I was nominated to the McDonald's team back in '79, which seems a lifetime ago, but I wish we'd had that 3-point rule they have in college now, because I'd have played somewhere. That 3-point rule is a little short, so that'd have been to my favor. I was pretty much a gunner. And college just didn't work out. I didn't give it a whole 100%, and the coach and I didn't see eye to eye. The next thing I knew, I was on the Pro Bowlers Tour, and I don't regret it. It's been a great life. In bowling, a lot of the guys aren't athletes. I'm an athlete. That's a big advantage. I never give up, and the desire to win.
Lovely young man. Mark Baker, Garden Grove, California, sunny California. And my friend Gene Cady, the Purdue basketball coach, is here watching, and I'm sure he enjoyed the basketball reference. And he was a good one, a gunner, he said. There's Gene. Welcome him here. There's a big coaches conclave in Atlantic City. Had a great season. He is a tremendous leader of young men.
And Chris, the McDonald's All-Star basketball game is on ABC Wide World of Sports tomorrow, so it all kind of fits in. Now, game 2, a red-hot Weber. He could mean trouble for the other 3 opponents.
But in the first frame of the first game, which turned out to be a victory, he had a problem. With a 4-6-7 now, what do we do, Bo?
He's just going for the 4-7, try to bounce one of the pins out, but more importantly, he's checking the approach. That's been the thing that has given the players the most trouble. It was the real undoing of David Husted the first match, and with these synthetic lanes, if there's one slight drawback the players have found is the approaches a change during the day. In other words, they may be a little slippery and a little sticky, so the player has to really be aware of that.
Baker. As big as he is, 6'4", 220 pounds, a powerful strike with his very first shot. So he is loose. He's had to wait for that first game. Now he's in the second.
Power, Mark Baker. Watch him roll that wrist underneath that ball. Big wrist action, high follow through. Baker off to a quick start.
Double and a big soft chair. And Mark Baker. Okay, Weber now after an open frame, shooting in the second. Took him a little while to get rolling, but about the 6th frame on, he came to life. Found the spot. Standing room only here at the Showboat Lanes. There are 60 total here in this entertainment complex. Very efficient spot. All right, second frame, and he's still working on the approach.
And one of the things to watch for here is that Weber is sticking a little bit at the foul line with that 5-step delivery. And what you cannot do is put powder or anything on your shoes that will come off on the approach. It's absolutely against all PBA and American Bowling Congress rules to adjust the approach. If somebody does have trouble, say a league player, he would have to call the front desk, and then it would be the judgment of the house personnel whether the approach should be adjusted in any way. So good tip there. Weber cannot put powder on his shoe. He must adjust his approach.
So Pete, who had 8 strikes and a 245-201 victory in the first game, now has doubled. And Baker, who opened with the doubles, will be shooting in the 3rd frame. His parents are here, father and stepmother, to see him compete in the United States Open. And he has a lot of fans in the crowd. You heard them ooh and ah when the 10-pin stood.
The first solid tap we've had today. Mark Baker leaves a solid 10. Changes balls to a little lower surface friction ball to convert the 10. He practices many times before we started on the air today, and once again the approach is his undoing. What happens when a player sticks on the approach? He does not wait for his arm swing, and it doesn't get all the way through the accuracy that he wants, and the ball always will go left of your target when you stick. You pull left, and that's what happened. We saw Husted go high a couple of times. Now we've seen Baker have some problems, so you have to adjust the approaches. The lane condition is perfect.
All but the 10-pin now on the left lane for Mark Baker, his first television appearance of 1988. Last year he was in 2. He won in Dublin, California, and he was his 3rd in the Southern California Open. 3 titles, 8 years as a pro.
All right, let's see if he can make the 10-pin this time, and he would still trail by 2 pins.
He did it. So we're in our second match, battling for the United States Open Championship in Atlantic City. I'm friend and host here at the Showboat, President and CEO Frank Modica, with Joe Antonora, Commissioner of the PBA.
Just a wonderful week. This started on Sunday with the practice session and Pro-Am. Then 56 games, 32 games qualifying, then 24 match play finalists in front of a capacity crowd in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Now Pete Weber, who leads by 2 pins, has a double working, can extend his lead to 12 over Mark Baker, 4th frame.
Oh, I've noticed all of you great champions, including you, you jump on opportunities. You know, you've really come out of the chute winging them.
Well, that's very important, Chris. And as you see, Weber had that opportunity all week long, as he never really was out of contention. He was 24th and moved all the way up to 4th. 56 games in a major championships, such as the PBA National or the U.S. Open. And, of course, the Firestone, the third jewel of Boeing's Triple Crown, has 48 games. That will be on 2 weeks from now. Now, Weber leads by 12, can make it 22.
Running that one out, almost into the bleachers. 25-year-old Pete Weber, who has 10 titles in a 9-year career. Strike percentage is awesome.
They say in the old saying, make your spares and the strikes will come. Well, that's not necessarily true on the Pro Bowlers Tours. This is the strike percentage on the first ball of each player as they bowled all week long, and whoever got the most strikes was a higher finisher.
Mark getting a little help cross lane, getting his strike, and he needed it in the 5th frame.
Mark gets a tremendous break as the ball comes in light, and with that power, he takes the head pin, a 3-pound, 7-ounce head pin, and he drives it to the left sideboard, comes around, takes out the 10. He can get right back in the match with a double.
Bo and I, this is the view we get. We have a pillar almost blocking our view, but not really.
Palmer Falgren to my right, keeping score. Finished 27th this week. Now, for the double, Mark Baker.
That's it. So, as they say, the game is on. 12 pins now. This is the second match. Very pivotal. If you just joined us, Weber won the first over David Husted, 245 to 201. And the winner of this game move into the semifinal match against the PBA Rookie of the Year, Ryan Shafer, 21-year-old pro from Elmira, New York. Four in a row. Make it 5 after an open frame to begin.
Pete really getting in the rhythm. You see him just snapping that wrist through every shot. It's that tremendous wrist action that gives him the high revolution on his bowling ball, the tremendous carry that has allowed him to be one of the premier players today. And once again, I reiterate, this has been a strike tournament. Spares are important, obviously, to make, but if you can't throw a lot of strikes, you can't contend in this tournament. Pete Weber using the full grip, looking for 6th strike.
So he is stringing them now. And in Atlantic City, they have a string going in the Miss America contest. That was then. Pressure on a 21-year-old. It's on Ryan Shafer. Doesn't seem to bother him. He'll meet the winner of the Baker-Weber match in the semifinal game.
Now Mark Baker doing a little housekeeping on the approach. He trails by 32 pins through 6 frame, has 2 strikes up, can cut the lead of Pete Weber's to 22 with a 3rd strike. Important shot.
Another 10 pin for Mark Baker on the right lane.
Mark Baker plagued by 10 pins so far. He started with 2 strikes, 10 pin in the 3rd, 10 pin in the 4th, and once again the 10 pin here in the 7th frame as you see the Nick Baker family, Mr. and Mrs. Baker, who flew in from California to enjoy their son's performance here. Now, Mark, important spare.
All right. So we got an answer to what does winning the United States Open mean to you, Mark Baker?
I finished 2nd in the Tournament Players Championship, and I finished 2nd in the Firestone Tournament Champions. Winning this tournament would be great just because Seagram's put all this money in this tournament to make our sport as big as every other sport. This would mean a world to me.
Well said.
Well, he thinks prestige starts with a dollar sign, and that's pretty much true if you do this for a living. Now, Baker in a must situation.
Won't hurt. It'll help you purchase another 911 Porsche.
Well, Billy Hardwick, who is a Triple Crown winner and has won the U.S. Open before, once told me you can't eat the trophies, and that's for sure. Here's Mark Baker through 32 games of qualifying. He led the qualifying, that #1, then 24 match plays, dropped to 3rd position, needs to work to hold on to that spot.
Mark Baker looking up at Nick and Vicky Shafer. Pleasant young man, 27 years old, and Pete Weber is 25. Father of 2. 6 in a row. Seven in a row, the last coming in the 8th frame. He had 8 strikes in his first game victory over Houston, 245 to 201.
Pete Weber, just as Palmer Fahlgren, our statistician, said, when he gets loose as he did in the first game, it means trouble for the other players. And so far, it's been major trouble for Mark Baker. And it's really not Baker's undoing. Baker could have 8 strikes in a row also. But Weber has this match well in hand. A strike here in the 9th frame would give him a potential 279 and lock up the match. He'd go against Ryan Shafer.
Oh, that 9th frame. There's so much to bowling. It looks like a simple game. It is complex.
Right now,
our tip of the week with Bo will feature how to adjust your ball weights to various lane conditions.
And Weber had the right weight on that replay as he trips the 4. Now Baker, possible 225. Mark Baker bowling as well in a championship round as I've ever seen him play before. He's won 3 PBA titles and will be in the Firestone Tournament of Champions. But he has not had any good luck so far today. 9 consecutive balls in the pocket, 4 10-pins. He missed one of those. Best he can shoot is 225. Weber en route to a 250 or better game.
Mark today making his 20th television appearance in his 8-year career, and today it's the story of 10 pins for the Californian.
Well, all these bad breaks for all this money, I'm not saying he would have won the match, but he'd have made it very close with Weber if he had just carried a few of those 10 pins. We'll come back somewhere down the line, and he'll have a good break later on this year.
So now it'll be interesting to see how Pete Weber will do against the Rookie of the Year, Ryan Shafer. That match coming up next from Atlantic City, New Jersey. It's open. What consistency. Pete Weber winning the first 2 games, identical scores, the same number of strikes. 8 in each game now goes against a rookie, a non-winner named Ryan Shafer. And what a match it should be with the tournament leader, Marshall Holman, waiting in the wings. And speaking of wings, not far from here, a luncheon with the pros, 600 checking in, and look at them. They're loving every minute of where there were about 12 or 13 professionals that talked to them and explained professional bowling, and they're having fun. There's John Petraglia, Joe Berardi.
Some of the other: Pete McCordick, Mark Roth, U.S. Open winner, Bud Fisher, Chuck Pisano. There's Brian Voss, Walter Ray Williams, Bob Benoit, Del Ballard, the defending champion, have been answering questions for that capacity group of about 800 people in there. Chris, it's an overflow crowd from the bowling center. This is live action, and hopefully they're enjoying, as we can see, the U.S. Open Finals. We're down to the semifinal game. It will be Ryan Shafer coming up against Pete Weber.
And let me tell you, that luncheon will set a trend. I think it's a great idea as we look at the tournament leader, Marshall Holman. Loose. He has to wait another game before he competes. We'll be back. Stop on the Professional Bowlers Tour will take us to Windsor Locks, Connecticut, a week from today for the finals of the Greater Hartford Open.
Chris, that's a wonderful tournament. I had the good luck of winning that tournament twice, and then on to the final stop on this year's 1980 PBT, the Firestone Tournament of Champions.
All right. And the man that's won the first 2 games by identical scores, 245 with 8 strikes in each event, Pete Weber, will shoot first.
Pete has all the leverage going, averaging 245. He's going against the Rookie of the Year, Ryan Shafer, who was not picked by anybody in today's press luncheon to win this tournament that I spoke with. So with that in mind, the advantage to Weber, but Shafer's a tough opponent.
And unlike his first 2 games, he has opened with a strike. Opened in both the 2 victories, but then strung them. Pete Weber, 25 years old. Youngest in the field, 21-year-old Ryan Shafer, 5'7", 135. Looking for the first win. First shot, right lane. Cranker at the line, leaving the 10 pin.
Solid 10. Hopefully that doesn't happen to him as many times as it happened to Mark Baker in the previous game. As we take a look at the profile of Ryan Shafer, Rookie of the Year, just contorts that body, then gets it in the proper position with that pivot step, snaps that wrist through the ball, raises up at the line.
Ah, youth.
All power.
Cross lane, 10 pin. Now a little sigh of relief. That first frame is over here in the semifinal game. The winner to meet, Marshall Holman.
Ryan Shafer has a somewhat unique style of spotting his target. We try to teach the arrows. I feel that's the best way because it keeps your chin up, your shoulders level, and allows you to reach forward out over the lane. But he spots at the dots, which are just 7 feet past the foul line. And when you spot that close, you really feel your target. You don't really see it because the ball goes by it so quickly.
High hit. What power. Strike in the second for Shafer of Elmira, New York. He has a brother and sister watching. His parents are in attendance here.
As we say on the Pro Tour, there's nothing left in the bag here among these 5 players. All power players, all, as if you like the term, crankers. Weber using that full grip, using that glove for a better feel of the ball and a little security to his hand, can start with a double.
He leaves a 10 pin on the right lane, Pete Weber.
Weber, who has struck on 72% of his strike attempts in the first 2 games, as he's bowled 245, 245. Had a percentage not quite that high during the 56-game tournament.
Precariously close in covering that 10 pin, believe me. Giving it a long, sort of a mean look. As we said, his father, Dick Weber, is here, but Juanita Weber, his mom, watching at home, she can't really handle being in person watching her son compete.
The man who has over 30 perfect games on the PBA Tour rolled his first 300 game at the age of 12, up 3rd frame.
Strikes and 3 frames for Pete Weber. Now Ryan Shafer, Rookie of the Year. Opened with a spare, marked with a strike. Shooting on the right lane. Uses, well, but about 6 inches of the approach.
Watch that wrist action at the point of release. Just snaps that ball.
'87 won the All Events title, the American Bowling Congress competition.
There's his parents, Vicky Shafer on the right, the father, Art, on the left. From Elmira, New York, not too far from here, upstate New York, pretty near where we're going to bowl next week, the Hartford Open.
Sneaks to the line as we get a contrast here.
The style of Pete Weber, the 1980 Rookie of the Year on the left, and Ryan Shafer, the 1987 Rookie of the Year on the right. Their wrist action is similar, but their arm swings are much different. Weber with that really high arm swing, Shafer with that very low arm swing. But see the wrist of Ryan Shafer, look at it snap around. See the wrist of Pete Weber, see that snap. High revolution, very volatile balls, tremendous strike balls. And they live by the strikes. Match is all even.
And a 7-pin on the left lane for Ryan Shafer. All of our telecasts and all of our championship events pressure, but this one in particular, we replay that last shot.
The action of the 4-pin over in the left-hand part of the screen is knocked out by the 2-pin. Normally, the 2-pin will drive the 4-pin straight back into the 7. Shafer, so much power on the ball. The action was too quick. And so far, he has been solid in the pocket. All 4 frames, has only been rewarded with 1 strike.
Continuing to mark, Ryan Shafer, the 3rd match today from Atlantic City. That's the way it looked then. We'll be back. United States Open, co-sponsored by the Bowling Proprietors Association of America. Its president, from a bowling family, sunny France, of Louisville, Kentucky, and its executive director there on the left, Chief Wapinski from Dallas, Texas.
Have hosted this tournament all the way back since the inception of time, just about 1941. We talked about the BPAA All-Star Tournament. Now Pete Weber has a 1-pin lead. Coming up in the 4th frame, has a strike up, can extend that lead to over Ryan Shafer to 11 with a strike here.
Carefully setting himself in the right lane. Marshall Holman off to our right. He's the tournament leader, watching the action, occasionally practicing. Looks like a thin hit, but got them all.
The type of ball that these players roll today is just fantastic for the light hit. You've seen Ryan Shafer be solid in the pocket in 3 of the 4 frames, and those are the 3 frames that he didn't strike. The one that was slightly off, he struck on. With Pete Weber, if he can keep the ball light there, his strike percentage has got to be 90% or better. Makes those pins dance. The full grip, inserting his fingers down just to the first knuckle. Weber can take a 21-pin lead.
High hit. Lucky, leaving only the 10.
You're right, Chris. He really got a good break. He did basically what we call quit on the ball. He started up to the foul line. He intended to go all the way through very confidently with a shot. Must have pulled his head slightly off the target. That triggers a subconscious quit on the ball, and he just barely avoided the split.
Sticking a little bit as he covered 10 pins successfully in the 5th frame. And now Ryan Shafer. A 4-7.
A little saying they have on the Pro Bowlers Tour, just too much toy. And he is just ripping those finger holes out, letting that wrist roll behind the ball, and on these synthetic lanes, just energizing the pins beyond their capability to fall down. They're fighting each other to fall down, and actually drove the 2-pin right over the top of the 4 and 7 pins. Shafer has thrown 5 quality shots, doesn't have much to show for it yet. He will trail by 12 pins after this conversion.
Second time ever on television, Ryan Shafer. First was in the '86 Brunswick Memorial World Open. We asked him about what it means winning today.
Well, this U.S. Open means a lot to me because the first part of this year was terrible, coming off my Rookie of the Year season. And I thought maybe my Rookie of the Year season was a fluke, but being in the finals in this tournament with 4 great bowlers and with all the money up front, this is my career.
Wonderful remark, isn't it?
21 years old. trails by 12, 6 frame.
And Nelson, if practice makes perfect, he'd win the award.
That's for sure.
Hard
I
worker.
asked him how he worked out of his slump, and he just said every idle moment he had when he wasn't bowling in a professional tournament, he went out and practiced. He was on the road, he'd hunt up another bowling center. When he was at home at Elmira, he'd work out 4 or 5 hours a day. And that's the way to be a great professional. You have to spend a full-time job working at it more than 40 hours a week. If you want to make this type of money, you have to really put out.
Another good break. Coming in the 6th frame with a strike and a close match.
Same shot that Pete Weber had in the 4th frame. He comes in light on lane 50, just saws that 5 out, driving up in the 4-7, and has set himself up in a position where he can take a 22-pin lead. And he'll need every bit of it against this young man. He is really, really hanging tough in there. I think if it gets close near the 10th, he'll surprise Pete Weber. Holyfield, a great fighter, and De Leon, no pushover himself in that Grand National race. 4.5 miles over 30 jumps as Pete Weber contemplates and roots for this young man up here.
Looking for his first United States Open win. This man, his dad had 4. We'll be back. We're delighted to have Mr. and Mrs. Mark Bozzini. Mark, the National Product Manager, Seagram Beverage Company. Second year that Seagram's has embraced this bowling proprietors event, the United States Open. $100,000 this afternoon to the winner. Semifinal game. This man trailing by 22 can cut it to 12. 7th frame. Averted the split, 4-7 again.
Ryan Shafer sent that ball extremely wide, and it looked like it was going to come back solid in the pocket, but it hooked too high. What happens with these cranker power players, when they miss to the right, they end up going high. When they miss to the left, they end up light. See, this ball goes all the way out to about the 3rd board, if you like it, on the plastic lanes, then it breaks too much. If he had kept that around the 7th board, it wouldn't have hooked quite as much. It's a terrific break, knocking out the 3, 6, and 10 pins.
Imagine that, 21 years old, and in his second only television appearance in the semifinal game, having finished 2nd out of a field of 240. If he could win, would be in the final game where the winner will get $100,000, the runner-up 55, which this man was a year ago. Finished 2nd to Del Ballard. Ballard, in this year's event, finished 70th.
Critical situation for Ryan Shafer. 8th frame, he trails by 22 pins.
Beautiful strike. 8th frame.
Now Pete Weber, who is really into it today, he's concentrating. He can feel that victory, as you said, Chris, but he can't take this young Ryan Shafer lightly. Shafer's been all over the pocket, hasn't had anything really good happen to him, but Weber can put him away with 2 strikes here, 1 in the 8th and 1 in the 9th.
Bagger, that inbred competitive spirit that came right from Juanita and Dick Weber. Now that's a doubleheader, a beauty. Tomorrow here on ABC.
Pete Weber, gauntlet in hand, can knock out Ryan Shafer with 1 more strike here in the 9th.
Weber's success today at stringing them when it was necessary is really standing him in good stead.
Watch the action of the 3rd pin on the left-hand part of your screen. The ball enters the 1 and 3 pocket. The 2 pin goes to sideboard, twist between the 4 and 7 pins, and that little topple is going to allow Marshall Holman to lock up this match against Shafer and go Weber lock it up against and go against Marshall Holman.
Okay, and sort of a resignation smile from this really likable, talented Ryan Shafer from Elmira, New York. So now it's another 10-pin.
The best Shafer can do is 207 with a spare here. Pete Weber is looking at a possible 259 in the driver's seat.
And the loser of this match will pick up a check for $30,000. It's a nice figure.
Not bad at all, and really the score is not indicative of how well Ryan Shafer has bowled in this match. Look at his game. 10-pin, strike, 10-pin, 7-pin, 4-7, strike, 4-7, and then a 7-pin against in the 9th frame, as you see the fidgeting hand of Pete Weber, who will go against Marshall Holman for the championship.
Ryan Shafer, who last night in the position round game defeated Marshall Holman by 14 pins. But with that last shot, there you see Mom and Dad, Art and Vicky Shafer.
Bit disappointed, but their son has many a good year ahead of him on the Professional Bowlers Tour. He bowled a good game, just had no breaks at all.
So the championship match is set. Two great bowlers, Pete Weber against two-time Open winner Marshall Holman. Here in Atlantic City at the Showboat Lanes, Pete Weber has won his 3rd match. 7 strikes, shooting a 236. Ryan Shafer's 179. We now go to the championship match, Weber-Holman. We go to 2 champions on the approaches, Bo and Dick Weber.
Thank you, Chris. The host here and the daddy of the man who's going to bowl for the championship, Pete Weber. He looks pretty good so far, Dick.
He certainly does bowl. He's pretty sharp. Of course, the other fellows didn't get quite the breaks that he got, but that's what you have to do to win. You need those breaks, and you've been through that before, and I know what your daddy was thinking when you won the U.S. Open before.
Well, it's a little bit different. First place, $100,000 on the line here. And secondly, let's face it, there's really no love lost between Marshall Holman and Pete Weber. Last year, everybody thought, some people thought that Pete Weber should be Player of the Year. Marshall Holman ended up with that title. This is a way to take it all out in one game. They could pretty much make that judgment for the bowling writers right here in one game.
Well, that's for sure, Bo. There's no bitterness really between them, but they respect each other tremendously, and I respect Marshall tremendously. He's a heck of a bowler, but I think also my son Pete is a great bowler. And so I gave you a prediction in the other room that Pete would win 268 to 258.
All right, Chris, thank you very much, Dick. 268, 258. He thinks Pete will be the champion. We'll know in about 18 minutes.
Okay, there's the handshake. Marshall Holman, who can move into the number 2 spot today and money earned way over $1,250,000. And 25-year-old Pete Weber has already won $798,000. Last year, 179. The previous year, 174. He is something to behold at such a young age. High hit, leaving the 4-pin on the left lane. The title match for the United States Open Championship and $100,000. Pete, notice here in the first frame, he was very, very patient, good tempo in his first 3 victories. He very much in a hurry in the first frame, Bo.
Very much so, Chris, and he has not had any strikes in the first frames. He's had open, and now he starts with a spare, so it really hasn't had any bearing on the rest of the match, but you can't give away even 1 frame in professional bowling. Now, our tournament leader.
Leaving a 10-pin, just knocking the 7 out at the last minute. He has won 2 United States Opens, 1981 and 85, 2 Firestone Tournament of Champions. This is why.
You're right, Chris. Just the tremendous style of Marshall Holman, that steady head. Everything goes in one plane. He doesn't raise up at the line. He stays the exact same level as he starts out his approach. very similar to one of the great players of all time, George Young.
Marshall was 5th in last year's United States Open, whereas Weber was 2nd. So Marshall will move up, and Pete Weber hopes he will a notch. What a battle. $155,000 at stake in this one head-to-head match live from the Showboat in Atlantic City.
You cannot practice for the pressure that is upon these two players, but what you can do is have a game plan. As you see Marshall Holman's route to the top spot, he qualified 3rd at 32 games and immediately took the #1 position and never headed.
There's the old Holman. 92nd telecast. Over the years that we've been able to comment about this 33-year-old from Medford, Oregon.
Going back what I was saying, Chris, is how can you practice or prepare for a championship match of such pressure? It really is mental. The physical game both these players have, just two of the finest games in the world today. But it's the guy who can keep his eyes on the target all the way through every single shot. I think if they don't let their eyes drift off their target through every frame, they'll be awfully tough to beat.
Another 10-pin for Pete Weber. I remember Edwin Moses, the great hurdler, said that in the big events, it's 80% above the shoulders.
Boy, there's no doubt about that.
And for Pete Weber, who won the first 3 matches with 23 total strikes, looking for his first here in the title game, opening with 2 spares.
Pete averaging 242, wiping the conditioner or lane oil off his ball. Not nearly as much oil used on synthetic lanes as, say, wood lanes, about 1/3 the amount, because it's not absorbed down in the surface and there's very little dispersion through the evaporation rate. Now, Weber up, 3rd frame, trails by 1.
Would you believe another 10?
He's saying, why now? And he knows what has happened. As a player bowls long, what happens is he doesn't quite get the finish on the ball. As you see Weber going around the 2nd arrow out to about the 4th board. Now the ball or conditioner has carried a little bit farther down the lane. The ball doesn't finish as much, and he leaves the 10-pin.
Between the 2 professionals, Holman and Weber, 31 PBA titles. 4 majors for this man. Off to the right there, the red coat, that's Al Hoff, the manager of the lanes. He and Pat Mathis doing a wonderful job for this prestigious event. And Marshall now with the 10-pin on the right lane, his 2nd.
Marshall with an interesting method of shooting spares. He uses the same ball, but he spins the ball. Just like a top. Watch his hand go right over the top of the ball. He takes the roll from between around the thumb and fingers and drops it way down to the bottom of the ball. It will not bite the lane. It's actually a dead roll. It's a mistake that a lot of amateurs make trying to throw the big hook. They go over the top of it. Watch the spin shot. See it spin? It won't bite the lane at all.
Okay, a man who's won 2 Opens. We asked him what it would mean winning a 3rd here.
Well, it's an opportunity to win my 3rd U.S. Open. Also, it puts me in a position to jump across Mark Roth and Earl Anthony into the #1 spot, all-time leading money winner on the PBA Tour. That'd be quite a thrill.
And what a nice change. Very much deserved by all the professionals that I feel have the toughest time on the road in competing, the professional bowlers. They deserve every penny they get.
Well, thank you, Chris. Now, Weber, 4th frame.
A 4 for Marshall on the left lane, and he shows his feelings.
Holman, who led this tournament by 442 pins, just lapped this field of 240 players, drifts a little bit high on the left lane, leaves the 4-pin.
And one of those 9 pros that had 300 games. I think a total of 12 in the Pro-Am and overall.
You're right. 12 ties the record set, and Greensboro, North Carolina, as Holman.
Oh, it's a close match. We'll be back with more. With $100,000 at stake to the winner in our live telecast, the United States Open at the Showboat in Atlantic City, pressure is really showing. Pace has slowed down. The bowling has changed. More spares, because this is the man that had 23 strikes with his 3 victories this afternoon. 3 spares, now shooting in the 4th frame. And again, the best he can do is mark with a spare. Richard Weber Florissant, Missouri, originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, where the Open will be 2 years from now.
And as Pete converts the 9-pin, he's been in the pocket all 4 frames, 4-pin, 10-pin, 10-pin, and once again the 9-pin. And next year, we will have the $500,000 Seagram's U.S. Open in Edmond, Oklahoma. But right now, the champion is yet to be decided. Only 2 pins separate these players after 4 frames. Weber in arrears.
There it is. First strike in the championship match for the winner of the first 3 games.
Automatic pin setters, ball pins being taken up there, put into what they call the turret, and it rotates each time a pin comes in. Once 10 pins are inserted, it drops down in the pin deck. 21 pins are used so that 10 are on the lane, 10 are in the turret or pin deck, and 1 extra just in case Holman drives one out of there on this shot.
Oh, and then this. 3, 6, 7, 10. You hate to see that happen in a game this important, this big.
Marshall a little soft with the shot, goes high, leaves the 3, 6, 7, 10. Has to slide the 3 pin over into the 7. The ball will take out the 6 and 10 pins. He can make this.
Another example of why he's won 21 PBA titles, 2 Opens, 2 Firestones, and the hearts of many.
What a big shot in a critical situation. He went from a possibility of trailing in this match by 13 pins to just trailing by 2 pins. He's still in it.
That can be an unnerving shot, too.
Very much so. There's 2 real psychological hits in bowling, Chris. One is being able to rip that rack out with a big swishing power ball and put it on your opponent. We know both these guys can do that. That and the other one is to make a very tough split. Let's see what happens the last 5 frames.
And his 3rd 10-pin. Still close. Remember, Weber has a spare up when he gets back shooting. Right now, he's contemplating. Look at those legs moving up and down. When he's out on the approach, they're trembling. In fact, all of them. This is competition and pressure at its finest. And would you believe, perhaps the world's greatest currently, missing the 10-pin. Wow. Pressure.
All right, you watch the styles of these 2 great stars. You say 2 of the best. Right now, the consensus best by the bowling writers is the man on the right, Marshall Holman, with that low backswing, everything under control. The player that some people feel is better than he, the man on the left, young Pete Weber, with that high-powered backswing. Right now, Weber could take a commanding 24-pin lead with a strike in the 6th.
Up until the last 2 frames, there was never more than 3 pins separating these 2 greats. And the split made, converted by Holman, an open frame, and a double now by Weber.
Boy, that missed spare, you can predict it every time on the professional bowlers tour. As a guy goes by a simple spare, he'll almost bet his opponent throws a double, as you see Pete Weber's reaction to that big double. Now he can really put the pressure on Holman with a third strike, take a 34-pin lead.
Crossing over, leaving the 610. And Bo, I've come to Atlantic City to do championship horse racing, championship boxing, a judge of Miss America a couple of years ago. This is the toughest afternoon we've experienced with the pressure, tension.
It's really showing up in this championship game, both players.
Just one glance up at his dad, Dick Weber. Marshall looking at the overhead score monitors. Better break that time. Open victories in 81 and 85.
Marshall Holman, who was quoted in the paper this morning as saying, "Whoever bowls me today is going to be scared to death. The $100,000 will put the fear in him." Right now, he trails by 22 pins, and he has a chance of losing that 100,000 as he quickly looks at that left sole. Very important that your shoes are in the proper condition. You don't want to stick at this critical time. Big hit.
Wobbly 7 on that left lane.
I have no idea what's going through his mind. He felt like his power would take out that 7-pin, and it doesn't happen in just such an important situation. Holman trails by 22.
Not happy. Walking back to the settee. Up now, Pete Weber, spare working, 8th frame. Striking the 8th. Now the 9th, where he has excelled in his first 3 victories. Leading by 22, could increase it.
Cannot lock up the match if he strikes here, but he could be well on his way to making it very easy for himself if he can throw a double.
A 10.
The pressure showing up, pressure on Daddy's face. He knows how to keep score. Pete Weber going at a 2:05 pace with this conversion. Marshall Holman a potential 2:03. The title is still up for grabs.
So again, the Bowling Proprietors Association of America and Seagram's Coolers getting a tremendous championship. Next year it'll be in Edmonds, Oklahoma, near Oklahoma City. Foundation strike for Marshall.
Boy, he would have loved to have
we're
that.
first?
He'd have loved to have that shot in the 8th frame. But Marshall, for him, has 52 out of 56 200 games this week, and he would love to have one right here and put some pressure on Holman. Marshall Holman on Weber. Marshall Holman cannot win the tournament if he doesn't strike on this ball. Absolutely must strike.
There it is again. Name of the game, the 10-pin.
Weber knows who won the match. No love lost. There's been some words said out there. Holman says, "Forget it, I can't win. I'll get it over with."
All right, so it's a second major for this thin, trim, 25-year-old from Paulson, Missouri, joining his father as the United States Open champion to go along with his Firestone. What a win for Pete Weber and a tough loss for Marshall Holman. 55. The professional bowlers tour. Brace. Pete Weber and his dad Dick are down on the approach. Pete has just won his first United States Open title. His dad has 4, 203 to 171, and there is Dad, a happy dad. Mark Bozzini, who is National Product Manager, Seagram Beverage Company. Sonny France, President of the BPAA, and Chief Wapinski, with the spoils of victory, a great one for Pete Weber. Coming up next, ABC's Wide World of Sports, 3 of Long Beach. Weber, 203, Holman, 171 for Nelson Burton. This is Chris Schenkel saying so long from Atlantic City.